about Whitman's song myself, and we'll be very quick about that. But before we do that, I want to talk about your thesis statements and things that you should and or should not do, because some of the errors are, it helps really to look at your thesis statements now, so that you're not continuing down the wrong path. There are a couple of guidelines that I can start with. Number one, the thesis statement itself should be a statement, one sentence. Your thesis statement should be one sentence. The best way I can describe that one sentence is that it is a statement of opinion about a theme or a vision or interpretation, an angle on a work. Thank you. I'd say it is one sentence. It is an opinion, okay? So it is something that is arguable. It's not something obvious. So to say Wordsworth's poetry is romantic, it's an example of romantic poetry, would not work, because everybody knows that, okay? That's not debatable. You want something that is opinion. Something like Wordsworth, let's see, maybe Wordsworth is seeking something transcendent in nature, as we see here, here, and here. And you want to be able to break it down into three categories, okay? You want to be able to break your statement. It's one sentence, one statement, with at least three, usually it helps to have three supporting points. Okay? Now I do have this, actually there is a guide to how to do your research paper, and I've got this all set up on the J section. Open with that, and I'll show you that. If you haven't looked at it, this will help as well. So your paper and your thesis should focus on some theme, issue, question, image, etc. that allows you to develop at least a 3-point thesis. You support that thesis through the essay. The thesis, the theme, the issue, question, image, whatever you're following has to be related to the work. So in Ode on Intimations of Immortality, it's clear that Wordsworth hates elephants, zebras, and giraffes. I don't know, maybe there aren't any, but you know, that kind of thing. And you find examples in the poetry, okay? So that's what we can start with. This is under Guide to Assignments on the, let's see, yeah. If you go to the J1 section, look at classwork tips and assignment guidelines and click on handouts, that's what you'll get, okay? You can click on Guide to Research Paper and it'll bring up that. This should help you. Now, it is an opinion. It does not have to settle the issue for all eternity because it's an opinion. You're not, if you're brilliant, you might say something, like if you're secretly really brilliant and you've published like novels and I didn't know it and all this, if you might say something that, wow, now everybody's going to think now we have the true understanding of Wordsworth. Or, you know, you talk about Coleridge and he really, this is not a poem about doing opium. You could do something like that. But it is an opinion. It is your opinion. People can still argue against it, okay? But you do not, see how big not is? Do not use I, me, my, mine, you, or your. Okay? It's obvious that it's your opinion because your name's on the paper. Okay? So you don't have to say I, me, my, mine, and you don't say you and your because like with my 101 class, they write about the Iliad. And I have gotten things about when you go in, I've gotten papers that include sentences such as, when you go into battle, you have to remember, sorry, I don't go into battle. I teach literature. I'm sitting here reading the paper about when you go into battle, you need to do this and that and the other, and you're always after Kleos when you're going into, and I'm like, I don't fight in any battles, except the battle to get you out of your paper. It's the only battle I fight. Get you and I. So, your thesis needs to be an opinion about the work. It's an opinion about the work or works, if you're doing several poems, something like that, okay? An opinion about the work or works, okay? So it's not an opinion about what your preacher would say, or an opinion about what you think should be done in the world, or whatever. So let's look at some of these. Okay. This kind of works. I don't know who this is. I've got two sentences here, and the thesis statement needs to be developed a little bit. There are both similarities and differences between Billy Budd and Jesus Christ. We're going to stop there instead of Christ's lives. We can just say there are similarities and differences between Billy Budd and Christ. That works. Except that if I read that as the first sentence of the paper, I'm going to go, of course. Okay, so we need to go a little farther with that. That's a good start. I know why we're talking about Billy Budd and Jesus, because we've talked about it in here and all of that. But of course, you could also say there are similarities and differences between Garfield the cat and Christ. I don't know what they would be, but saying similarities and differences, you haven't said anything yet. Does that make sense? Because you just said they're similar and they're different. It could be anything. So we want to answer the question, so what, or why, okay? Through looking at the way that they lived, their appearances, and their deaths, it will be decided if Billy Budd is an appropriate parallel to Christ. That's better, okay? Through looking at the way that they lived, their appearances, and their deaths. So I've got three things. The way they lived, their appearances, and their deaths. I'm assuming, I don't know whose this is, but the appearances thing, I'm assuming the person is meaning that the description of things like he's beautiful and he's strong and things like that. So that is an appearance. It's the way a person looks. And then maybe Christ grew in stature. I don't know. You could do something with that. Now, this is going to, the focus should then be on looking at Billy Budd, the character, in the story and saying, like you might come up with something like that generally says, this is what Christ looked like. See, he fits the definition or fits the character as an appropriate parallel or allegory or something like that. That would work. And then you might even conclude, after you've done a couple of paragraphs on their lives, a couple of paragraphs on their appearances, a couple of paragraphs on their deaths, how they each died. Because there are overt comparisons in the story. Is it intentionally saying they're the same, or is he making fun of the similarities? Then you might say toward the end of that paper, answer the question, so what? Is this because he's saying he's trying to tell the story of Christ and show this, or is he trying to make fun of people who use that as an excuse for things? Okay, that one kind of works. Let's see.